I'm going to speak about the social networks and research on social networks, and more particularly the cognitive aspects of social networks. Please don't do the flash because it disturbs me. Thank you very much. So the cognitive aspects of social networks and how we can use the social media on the internet to manage knowledge. And you see that I will distinguish two aspects in this knowledge management process: the personal knowledge management and the social knowledge management. So this will be the core of my presentation. But I will begin by a long philosophical introduction. So I hope that you will be able to concentrate and to listen carefully, because it will be rather complex. First, when we speak about the social, better like this, okay. When we speak about the social networks, we should remember the work of some interesting researchers, and I would like to mention them here. For example, maybe you have heard of this political scientist, American political scientist that is called Putnam, and who spoke about the importance of social capital and a relation between people to have a vibrant democracy. So this is a very important author in the field. Of course, you know maybe Manuel Castells, who wrote these three books on the networked society and the information age. You should know also a researcher called Barabasi, who tries to create what he calls a science of networks, not only social networks, but all kinds of networks. But of course, the social networks is, in his mind, part of this new science of networks. Maybe you have heard of this sociologist called Granovetter that discovered the importance of what he called the weak links, because you have strong links between, let's say, the members of the same community, the same family, the same neighborhood, but you have also weak ties between people belonging to different communities, and in the general functioning of the society, these weak ties play a very important role. And I should mention also Barry Wellman, who is now at the, maybe he's retired, but he's at the University of Toronto, and he tried to develop a whole sociology based on networks of individuals. He tried to understand the functioning of the society, not in terms of community or in terms of social classes, but in terms of networks of individuals. And he makes a relation between the networks of people and the communication networks, and especially the digital communication networks. So there is already a very rich tradition of study and of reflection about the social networks, and I'm going to assume that you know already everything that all these authors have written. I'm not going to repeat, okay? But I mentioned. Well, okay, as I said, I will replace the notion of social network into a general approach, a more general philosophy that is basically my philosophy. So at the beginning it will be a little bit abstract because for me we cannot understand social networks if we don't understand human communication, and we cannot understand human communication if we don't understand symbolic communication and manipulation of symbols, and finally, what is, anyway, a symbol? Okay? So I will go back to this notion of symbol manipulation, and I will try also to sketch a kind of unitary vision of the world in which we humans live, based on this notion of symbol. Once I will have do this, I will concentrate on the question of knowledge management, as I said, and I will finish my presentation by evoking some possible future developments. Please remind me your name. Barbara? As Barbara said, I'm working currently on a meta-language, a computable meta-language that tries to solve certain problems that I will evoke during the course of this presentation. So I will say some words about IEML, but I cannot present the whole project. Okay. So first, let's look at this slide that I presented yesterday evening. First, to remember that we cannot isolate the networks of people from other networks. Okay? And if we want to understand social networks, we should also understand the way the people and the networks of people are related to networks of communication, to networks of equipment and material technologies, to the biological networks of the environment, and also the way the people are related to knowledge, how they are related to governance, to values, to rights, to duties, and finally how they are related to, or how they are part of networks of skills, of know-how, of economic networks, and so on. So sometimes the people who are specialists of one particular domain tend to isolate this domain from the rest of the interdependence of all the networks. Okay? And I don't know if you remember the meaning of these 6 lines. I'm going to repeat it. So this means emptiness. This means virtual, this means actual, this means sign, this means being, and this means thing. So you can see, for example, that in this case, you have on the actual being. And here, for example, it is the actual sign. And here it is the actual thing. And it's the same on the top, but instead of being actual, it is virtual. Now, I think that you understand the distinction between virtual and actual. Basically, what is actual can be situated in the spatial-temporal continuum. It exists somewhere in space and time. And what is virtual cannot be situated inside the spatial-temporal continuum. For example, if I think about, I don't know, justice or beauty, can you tell me where exactly is the beauty? Where exactly is the justice? You can't, okay? It's a general category, it's an abstraction. It does not exist somewhere. That's why it is virtual, but it's not because it is virtual that it does not exist, because it organizes our life, our mind, our interactions, and so on. So it exists, but it is not actual, it is just virtual. Okay, now, a little bit more complex, sign, being, thing. Yesterday night, when I came back in my hotel room, as I'm a Twitter addict, I looked at the, hashtag 2010 CC, and I found a comment, this sign being thing is already in Peirce, the American philosopher who is one of the great philosophers of semiotics. Okay, it is in Peirce, it is also in contemporary linguistics, and you can find it during the whole history of philosophy, during the Middle Ages, and it goes back to Aristotle. So I don't pretend that it is my personal invention, but it is very important to understand it. Okay. I say the word microphone. So this is a sound. Okay? This is the sign or the signifier. There is the concept of microphone that is not in English or in French or in Portuguese. It is an abstract class. Because, how do you say microphone in Portuguese? No, it's a bad example because it is Greek, microphone. Anyway, but maybe in Chinese it's something completely different. It is not. But anyway, we can distinguish that the same concept can be represented by different signifiers in different languages. So it's evident that the concept or the signified is something different than the signifier. Okay? So we know this distinction of the signified and the signifier. The signified, it is a concept, it is a general category. So as a general category, it cannot exist in the material world. it exists necessarily in some minds, because there is no general concept or no abstract category outside of a mind. It is created by a cognitive process. It does not exist. It is not something that can be perceived. It is abstracted. So, anytime you have a signified, you have an interpreter or someone or some mind for who the signifier means the signified. Okay? So for me, the signified and the mind are always related, and I call it the being. But these concepts goes back again from the beginning of the philosophy. And then you have a third aspect, and it is what I have in my hand. This is the thing, the reference. So there is a ternarity, the sign, the being for who there is a concept or meaning and so on, and the thing. And what is interesting is that you cannot have one without the two others, because they are functionally related. And I cannot say that the referent is always a material thing. For example, if I am speaking about justice, there is a concept of justice, but it refers to something. If I am speaking about justice, I am referring to something that is abstract, but that is nevertheless, in this case, the thing. Okay? Or me, myself, I can be the being, or I can be used as a sign. For example, when you see Pierre Lévy entering this room, you will tweet this, so I am used as a signal or as a sign. Or I can be the reference. Okay? So it's not some entity that is a sign, a being, or a thing. It is a function that and any kind of entity can play this function. So I hope that this is relatively clear. So now you know the basic pieces of the game. Okay? The virtual, the actual, the sign, the being, and the thing. And this game, only the human beings can play it, not the animals. The animals can communicate, and there is a kind of semiotic relation that they can have access to. For example, they can recognize that, oh, this is an imprint of another animal, or this is the smell of something. So they recognize that there are signs of something. They can obviously communicate their emotions, or they can communicate important things about their environment, like, there is food here, or beware, there is a predator, or something. But animals don't have the full ability to manipulate symbols as we have. And I will develop this longer very soon, but I can tell you immediately that no animal is able to ask questions, no animal is able to tell stories, and no animal is able to entertain a conversation or a dialogue. Okay, this is purely human, and it is based on our ability to manipulate symbols, and particularly natural languages. So the symbols that we manipulate are always part of symbolic systems. There are no isolated symbols. Okay, it's not that the microphone means this and red means this color in an isolated way. No, we have languages. There is the French, there is the Chinese, there is the Portuguese, and so on. Symbols are always part of symbolic systems. You don't have, for example, the bishop and in one place and the king in another place. No, we have the chess game, and all the pieces are part of the same symbolic system. Okay? Or it's not that we have. We can say the same for the religion. We can say the same for the economic symbols like money or checks and so on. So these symbolic systems are always given to us by the tradition, by the culture, by something like a community. Okay. So our ability to manipulate symbols is related to our participation to a culture, to a tradition. And what we do in my perception of things is that we are like processors, individual processors of a great social processing that is using particular symbolic systems. And we can do this only because we share these symbolic systems. For example, we are supposed to obey the same laws, or to sell and buy with the same money according to the same rules, and that's why we can do business. Or when we speak, we are using the same language and so on. So the whole functioning of the society is based on this fact that we are all using the same symbolic system, and that's why our collective intelligence is greater or bigger or more powerful than the collective intelligence of the animals. Of course, collective intelligence began with the ants, with the bees, and all social animals are more powerful than individual animals, and it's a great survival strategy to be social and to have a collective intelligence. So as social animals, we have the same kind of collective intelligence as the societies of apes, for example. But in addition, we have this ability to manipulate symbols and to transmit knowledge this way. So knowledge can be accumulated from generation to generation. There can be innovations, and we can learn progressively, generation after generation, to become more efficient and to reproduce more efficiently, and that's why we are so heavily transforming the planetary environment, because we are very successful in doing this. Well, so this linguistic ability gives us, let's say, 3 cognitive gifts. The first one being reflexivity. We are able to think about the way we think. And we are conscious, if you want. But when I say conscious, I don't mean that we can feel pain or pleasure, or that we really see something that is red, or smell the perfume of a rose and things like that. animals are exactly like us in this regard. When I speak about consciousness, I mean reflexive consciousness. Okay? This is different. This is something that is purely human and that can occur only through language. And it is this reflexivity that helps us to ask questions or to realize that we don't know, because we are able to check our own cognitive processes. So we know that we don't know, we ask questions, and we can decide deliberately, consciously to learn, for example. Then there is the second gift, and it is the dialogue. Dialogue is very close to reflexivity, but instead of having a representation of one's own cognitive process, we can create representation of others' cognitive process. We can imagine what it is to be someone else. We can put ourselves in the shoes of someone else. This is the basis of dialogue. We try to understand the others, and we expect, sometimes wrongly, that they will try to understand us. But normally there is a kind of reciprocity, and everything works well when there is this reciprocity. Also, we can adopt some norms for the dialogue. For example, you are going to ask a question only when I will have finished my speech, or you are not allowed to say the word therefore if it is not in a real logical demonstration. So we adopt social norms for the dialogue that are purely social, like who is going to speak after who, but also we can adopt logical rules for dialogue, like in the scientific community, for example. You have to have, okay, logical reasoning, and you have to quote the people you are talking about, you have to put the exact references. All these are norms of dialogue. And finally, another thing that does not exist in the animal realm is narrativity, the ability to tell stories. An ordinary story, okay, this is the most simple. For example, I am able to isolate some actors, some particular actions, some particular qualities and properties, and I can describe a process of transformation that is occurring to this person through the action of this other person, and there is a kind of intertwining of causes and consequences, and I can describe this interconnection of lines of causes and consequences. So it's not only a literary game, it's also the way we are representing to ourselves our personal lives, but also our collective life, our national or ethnic history, but also it is the basis of any scientific knowledge, because scientific knowledge is just an improvement of this basic ability to tell stories. Okay? It's just a little bit more formalized, but it is still stories. Well, so this is symbolic cognition. And now, from this perspective of symbolic cognition, I would like to present you a kind of cosmology. And you recognize Okay, let's figure out a kind of cosmic egg. Okay. So the south pole of this cosmic egg will be the actual. And the north pole of this cosmic egg will be the virtual. It's like the south and the north, or the positive and the negative. There's a kind of polarity here. And there are energies, transformations that are circulating from virtual to actual and from actual to virtual. And then we have three zones around the equator, or maybe it's the intertropical zone. We have the being, we have the minds, we have and as Maturana said yesterday, the mind is always in the present moment. So we have instants of consciousness. And what's going on during these instants of consciousness? Well, we have perceptual or sensory motor perceptions. We feel phenomena. We see something, we have pain, we have pleasure, microphone in my hand, and so on. So phenomena. And then we have also concepts. We have discursive processes. All these phenomena are organized by concepts. So if you look into yourself, you'll see that there are phenomena and there is a little voice or little images, okay, that are organized conceptually. And there is a connection between the two, a kind of energy linking the phenomena and the discursive process, and that is the emotional energy. We like it, or we don't like it, or we want it, or we don't want it, and this is going on and on. And the rest of the universe is just a creation of our minds. Okay, we have no access to any external world if not by our perceptions and inner discourse. There is no other way. We are enclosed in this cosmic egg. Okay, so this is the being. This is, in a way, the thing. So close to the mind. The closest thing to the mind is the body, of course. And the body is material. Of course, it is perceived through the mind. We don't know anything about this materiality, if not by our cognitive processes, but we assume that it has a kind of reality. Okay? We have a body. Well, and this body is in interdependence with other bodies, with the material environment, and from steps to step with the entire biosphere on the Earth. And finally, if we go down to the more actual of the actual, we get to what is studied by the physicians, no, the physicists, by the physicists, that is pure matter, energy, space, time, little quanta of something that are purely situated in a kind of coordinate system describing space-time. And all this is organized by a complex mathematical group of transformations. This means that all these little quanta of space-time energy and so on are transforming themselves into themselves according to computable mathematical functions. Okay? This is what we have built by our science, and we think that it works, that it is like this. So we have a scientific model here, a group, a quantic relativistic group of transformation. Okay, this is the actual part of our cosmic egg, and you see the pole is a kind of mathematical abstraction. And then we go to the north part, and here there is the symbolic manipulation. So first we manipulate symbols with our bodies, of course, and speaking and producing sound and producing symbols here. But it is amplified by technology, it is recorded somewhere, or you read, you write, and so on. So we have media that amplify our symbolic abilities. More memory, more recording, more transmission abilities, and more manipulation, processing abilities. And today, of course, all these media, the history of media is very long, but today, all these media are converging in one single digital medium, and it is the new, let's say, media sphere. Okay. But my guess, and here we are speaking about my personal research about IEML, my guess is that at the North Pole of this cosmic egg, we should find something like a mathematical group of transformation, but not a group of transformation about quanta of space-time energy, a group of transformation about concepts. I imagine a kind of semantic coordinate system, infinite, but mathematically processable, computable, where we could be able to situate all the concepts and to represent all the transformations between concepts, and eventually all the transfer of emotional energies between concepts. And this being the explanation and also the representation of what's going on in the media sphere. Okay, like we explain what's going on in the biosphere by saying, okay, it's a complex process of interaction between molecules, but if we want to understand why it's happening like this between the molecules, we have to go down to the atoms, and then we have to go back to the quanta and so on. So here, if we want to make sense about what's going on the web, in the media sphere, in the digital medium, that today is a complete chaos. Don't repeat what I'm supposed to be a great supporter of the internet, and I like Twitter and so on. But I think that today it's a complete chaos, and that we are just at the prehistory of the evolution, and that we will be able in the future to unify this field of concepts, of symbol, basically the field of human symbolic cognition, into one vast mathematically organized coordinate system. And in this coordinate system, we will be able to describe first and understand progressively what's going on. We'll be able to discover progressively the immense universe of human collective intelligence, and not the horrible chaos that we have now. And this was the extraordinary deed of the scientific revolution of the 17th century. Okay. And what we have done after this. But the basis was given at this time, because it is at this time that we had that we have built a unique, infinite, geometrically organized space, material space. So what I am speaking about is a kind of unique, infinite, geometrically organized cognitive space. Okay? But of course it's not the same mathematics, it's a different universe. And what is connecting both universes is the human mind, of course. And this, and I mean the thing and the sign, the south and the north, does not exist without the being, without the intertropical zone. Okay? This is an interdependent unity. So this was my philosophical perspective, and now we are going to speak about very practical things. Okay, we want to develop social networks in social media, and we want to use them for the advancement of human development and for the management of knowledge. Okay? All this has to begin with personal abilities. There will be no marvelous collective intelligence if the individual people are not smart. Okay. The collective intelligence is emerging from the personal intelligence. It's not the one or the other. It is the one and the other, and the one because the other, and vice versa. So, how to behave in this new digital environment to create, to share, and to apply efficiently knowledge. So first, we have to manage our attention. So this is I am no more in the theoretical part. Here it's the practical part. Okay? So you have to define your interests, your priorities, your area of expertise, your actual area of expertise, or the expertise that you want to reach. Okay? So all this is defining priorities. you have to stay focused, avoid distractions, concentrate on what is the most important. Okay, so don't say to me, there is too much information in the internet, or we have too much solicitations, or we want someone else to do the filtering and so on. No, you have to do it. It's your responsibility. And you have to stay focused, but you have also to keep an open mind. To stay open to something new that is maybe going to happen. Okay? It's a balance. So, once you have decided to manage your attention, you have to connect to valuable sources. And in this new digital environment, the valuable sources are first the people. Okay. Who are you going to follow on Twitter? Okay. To whom are you going to make friends on Orkut or Facebook or any other? Okay, so you have to be selective. There are people, but there are also institutions, schools, companies, any kind of group. You consider all these entities as information sources. Okay? And then you have to gather all this information flow in one place, and you have to, at the same time, filter and categorize. So filtering, because in fact there are two levels of filtering in the practical day-to-day operation. First, you filter the sources. And when you receive the stream, you filter a second time the information itself. And you cannot filter it if you have not a categorization system or a kind of classification or kind of conception of that helps you to say, okay, this is, for example, this is about knowledge management, this is about education, this is about the transformation of the news, this is about, I don't know, Brazil in general, and this is about the state of Paraná, and so on. You have to put things in little folders, or you have to tag things. If you don't have any categorization system, you are lost. Okay? And it will be very difficult to filter the information. And all this should be learned at school, by the way, but I'm not sure that it is, but we should do it now. And once you have filtered and categorized, you record. You record, for example, you go to Delicious and you say, okay, this website or this page, I want to record it long term. Or you can have files somewhere in some cloud, I don't know, Google Docs, Mac, I don't know. But I recommend that you don't put your long-term memory only on your computer. It should be somewhere on the cloud, it's more secure. And also, it helps to augment the collective intelligence because you can share these things. And you can not only share the data, but you can also share your tagging or your classification system and so on. And finally, not finally, but the last step is the step of synthesizing information. For example, you write an article, a blog post, or you augment one particular article in Wikipedia, okay. Or you create a document in the Escola de Redes, and you put it at the disposal of the community. Okay. You create something that is a synthesis plus something original. And then you share this. Okay? You send a small message on Twitter, or you try to make this available by search engines, and so on. So there is a communication, and hopefully, maybe a conversation that can begin around what you have created. So this gives you new ideas, all this experience, and you go back to your attention management. Maybe you can redefine a little bit your priorities or your area of expertise. You have learned something new. You can connect to some new sources, or you can disconnect from sources that are no more relevant, and the cycle begins again. This is the personal knowledge management. If there is no personal knowledge management, you cannot have community knowledge management or social knowledge management or knowledge management by networks of people. Okay? If the people are not doing their job, it's not the network that's going to do it for them. This is very important to understand. When I speak about collective intelligence, it's not to remove our personal responsibility, it's just the opposite. Okay? Because now you are not only responsible for yourself, you are also responsible for the community. Now let's look at the cycle of social knowledge management. Here, these little circles, PKM, means personal knowledge management. So what's going on? You have what is outside the circle and what is inside the circle. What is outside is first an area of practice. For example, we are all, I don't know, teachers, or we are all journalists, or we are all librarians, I don't know. A particular area of practice. And from this real personal practice, we have a kind of intuitive knowledge, something that we know from our habits, that in our reflexes we have embedded this knowledge, but it is still implicit. We don't have put it into formal categories. Okay? So one of the works of the personal knowledge management is to transform the implicit knowledge into explicit knowledge. Why? Because the knowledge that stays implicit is very efficient for you, or very efficient in a particular local environment, but it cannot be decontextualized. Cannot be easily shared. Okay? So we want to transform implicit knowledge into explicit knowledge, and this is done through a conversation. Because we speak about our practice, and as we are speaking, we try to communicate with others, so we are obliged to use words, to use concepts, and to reach agreements about the meaning of these words and so on. And progressively we create common metadata. A metadata system is a classification system. It's a way to organize concepts, a way to classify things. Okay? You can think about a library, for example. All the books are the data, and the catalog and the index card are the metadata. The data about the data. You cannot navigate into a huge quantity of data if you have no well-organized metadata system. But we know how to do it with real books in paper and so on. But in the new digital environment, it's much more complicated because this community that has the same practice can come from different countries, for example, or maybe in their companies or in their institution they are using different metadata systems and so on. So the notion of accumulating a common memory is let's say, is more a problem than a solution, because accumulating a common memory means if it's really a memory and not a chaos of data, it should be organized by a metadata system. If it's not the case, it's not really a memory. And the people also are trying to assess the data. Not only they say it is about this topic or this subject, they should say also it is valuable in this situation, or it is not very useful if you are in this case, and so on. So all the people are accumulating data, and at the same time they are organizing this data with metadata and with evaluation. This is the work of social knowledge management. And you see that it is the result of the work of the people. So you have three main transformations or three main movements. First, a centripetal movement from implicit knowledge to explicit knowledge, data and metadata well organized, assessed, and so on. You have a movement of conversation about data, about metadata, about value, about what are we speaking about, okay? So between this implicit, because if you are not able to take this common knowledge and to apply it in your personal practice, it will be of no use. Okay? So there is this, again, this ternary dialectic from explicit to implicit, from implicit to explicit, and creative conversation between the people. So, now, as I said, we have a lot of currently, this is the idealized model for me of knowledge management, is dialectic between personal knowledge management and social knowledge management. But we have a lot of problems because, as I said, we speak different natural languages. And you know, I suffer a lot in speaking in English here. I would like to speak French, but I cannot. But I can speak English, it's possible. And a lot of you can understand me. I can even understand Portuguese. It's fantastic. But I really cannot understand Japanese. So, as it is the second most used language on Twitter, for example, maybe there are very interesting informations, but I cannot find them. So, in terms of social knowledge management, it's a big problem. So you have this question of natural languages. You have this question of classifications, ontologies, metadata systems. You know, in one particular library, you have one system of metadata. Okay? So all the documents are well organized, you can find them and so on. In another library, you can have a completely different system of metadata. It's not a problem. I go in this other library and I look in the index, catalog, and so on. No problem, I find whatever. But this was at the time of the physical libraries. Today, all the libraries are putting their data online. So, in fact, we are here today in the situation where we have one big global library, but not one big metadata system. We have a lot of different metadata. So, it is a complete chaos. The computer scientists have created this, I'm not going into the details, but I've created these things that are called ontologies. They are very formalized classifications, and these very formalized classifications allow for automatic reasoning. But generally, one ontology is very limited, and you have a lot of different ontologies. So there is no interconnection between the ontologies, and even worse, on the same subject, you have a lot of different ontologies. So people say, okay, we are not going these very formalized classification systems. We are going to allow all the people to tag the documents as they want. And that's what happened, for example, on YouTube or on Delicious or on a lot of blogs and so on. This is called folksonomy, because everybody can tag as they want. And it works. It's very useful. But again, some people are tagging in English, some others are tagging in Japanese, and so on. And also, some people tag something from their point of view. The fact that the same document can be tagged different way by different people that have different point of view is not bad per se. It's very interesting, because you don't have one librarian that decides, and if you have another point of view, you cannot express it. So this is good. But when you have different tags because one has written the word at the singular form, and another has written the word in the plural form, this is not very interesting. Okay, so you have chaos again. So there is a lot of chaos. And also, the people, I'm sure that you yourself, you're participating to different communities that are organized by different systems. Also, the same community can organize its knowledge management by using different platforms. For example, in my classes at the university, I asked the students to use Twitter, to use Facebook groups, and to use Delicious. It's not so easy to transfer data, and it's almost impossible to transfer metadata. So all this creates fragmentation and chaos. So that's why I think that we are currently at the prehistory of knowledge management on the internet. We have the symbolic systems that are adapted to the previous media, but we still don't have the symbolic system that is adapted to the huge memory that we have now, to the personal and collective knowledge management that we are practicing now. And finally, we don't have a way to represent concepts that is able to exploit fully the computing power that is at our disposition today. So, this is, I see that you are tired. So, this is my last slide. It is my personal perspective on the history of the digital media. You remember yesterday there was layers of media. Here I am trying to analyze the internal structure of the digital medium. Internet did not appear magically at one time. It evolved during time. It took time for the evolution of the internet, for the construction of the whole medium. And in my humble opinion, this evolution is not finished. We are still in the middle of the evolution. So what kind of layers am I speaking about? I think that here we are dealing with layers of addressing systems. The first layer is the basis of everything. It's the computer itself. It is the basis of the electronic, digital, automatic symbol manipulation. Okay. If you don't have a very precise addressing system for the bits of information, the zeros and the ones, in your computer, you have no computer. Because what is a computer? No flash, please. What is a computer? It is something that takes bits into some memory, that transform these bits and that take these bits back into the memory. So if you don't have a very precise addressing system for every bit of information, you cannot perform any automatic computation. And the operating systems are precisely what help the computers to handle this layer of addressing. They are doing the relation between the applications and the 0 and the 1, the bits in the physical memory of the computer. Okay, so this is the basis of everything. And again, this is not something that is going to disappear. It will always be the basis of everything. Okay, you need automatic symbol manipulators, so you need precise addressing systems. Okay. Then, the second layer of addressing is the addressing of the computers in the network. And this is the internet. The computers are able to exchange messages, to process collectively information, because each one of them have a precise address in the network. And the internet is nothing else that a protocol for the addressing of the automatic symbol manipulators in the network. It's not something material, it is an addressing system. So it's called TCP/IP. And it became popular. The internet has been invented at the end of the 60s, but it became really popular and in fact universal only during the 80s, at the time of the advent of the personal computer. Okay? So suddenly computing became a communication device because there was the internet and because people can manipulate themselves, their computers. Okay? I have personally known the time when computers were huge machines in refrigerated rooms and they had no keyboards, no screens, and you communicated with them with punched cards. It was awful, right? It was not a communication system at all, but today it is. So the internet is the basis not of the automatic symbol manipulation, it's the basis of the communication. And then, so connection between computers. And then you have the third addressing system, the one that we are currently using. This is the web. For example, a URL is the address of a page, okay, or the address of a website. A web site, a site, in fact, is an address. Here, it's no more the address of a machine, it's the address of a document. Okay? It's more abstract. And it is because you have this new level of abstraction, these addresses of the pages, that you can have hyperlinks. Okay? Because if you don't have the address of the beginning, of the departure of the link, and the address of the arrival of the link, you have no hyperlink at all. So that's why the web is inherently related to the notion of hypertext. HTTP means hypertext transfer protocol. And the URLs and HTTP come together. It's because you have the addresses of the pages that you have this great global hypertext. So you see that at each new layer, you have a new kind of use, a new kind of tool, basically. Here you can automate numerical operations and logical operations. Here you are beginning to create virtual communities, and you are beginning to make the convergence of all the media. At the stage of the web, it's the creation of this huge global hypertextual public sphere that we experience now. You can see here address of pages or address of data. So this is the new frontier of the web, because increasingly the documents that we can read on the web are created through data. And when you have to update some information, it becomes absurd to take every document one by one and to update the information like this. Maybe you could update the information at the level of the data, and this creates automatically all the documents that are fed by the data. Or maybe you could envisage to organize the whole web as a big database. This is the idea of Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the web, and he wants to improve the web by going until the end, from the documents to the data themselves. But we are still with the same addressing systems. Okay? It's still URLs. Now, what I'm speaking about is a new addressing layer. An addressing layer for the concepts, for the ideas. Not a web of data, but a web of metadata, or even more, a group of transformation of metadata. That's what I was speaking about at the beginning of my speech, if you remember. Because if you look at the URLs, very often the address itself has nothing to do with the contents. Okay? It is opaque. So we can imagine, I'm not speaking about suppressing, of course, the layer of the addressing the data. It's very good as it is. I am speaking about a new layer, a layer of the concept, where all the addresses will be variables of the same group of transformation. This means that you can imagine that every transformation of concept could be described as a computable function. It's very difficult to imagine. But this will lead the human collective intelligence very far, eventually. I will stop there. I will leave you with this thing very difficult to imagine, almost impossible. And I hope that you see the difference between this project or this vision and the vision of the Esperanto, for example. I'm speaking about a universal language, but not a universal language that will be spoken by people. Okay. I am speaking about a universal language for metadata on the internet that could be manipulated automatically by the computers. So it's something completely different. Okay? And the end user is not going to be forced to learn this system. You will interact with it with natural languages or with icons, or there will be interfaces. But there will be a layer to which there will be a correspondence between the concepts in natural languages and the ability to manipulate bits automatically. So today we have something like this, for example, for the images. You know, you use Photoshop, for example. It is because the shapes and the colors are coded by pixels that you can manipulate images with your computer. You can do almost everything you want with sounds or with music. It is because the sound is digitally coded that you can do it. You can say, but okay, but it's the same thing for the texts today. Yes, what you code digitally today is there is an A, there is a B, there is a T, and so on. It is a sequence of characters that is coded. It's not concepts. So, think about the ability to code digitally concepts and to be able to represent by computable functions the transformation between concepts. Thank you.